Greetings, this is Daniel Presedo for Adobe Photoshop, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to revisit an older tutorial per request. It was from DAZ Studio to Photoshop, and we're going to see if anything has changed. I don't believe anything really has changed, but here is a document that I have in Photoshop with an image of a scene that I might throw a dinosaur figure in. So let's go ahead and switch to DAZ Studio. DAZ Studio is a free tool to create 3D scenes. Some of the content is free, a lot of it is free, and some of it is paid for, especially if you want to configure, modify, morph, change, add clothing, and such. I'm going to use a dinosaur figure here that is indeed a paid-for figure. It's a wonderful T-Rex figure that comes with materials, 2 different materials, and some poses that we will use. And you will see I will double-click this dinosaur. Let's go ahead and move back by clicking on this box with the plus sign, and now we can kind of see the figure, navigate the camera, just kind of look at it. All right. Now let's go ahead and pose this figure. I think I used something similar to that, but we're going to use something slightly different. We're going to have him run. All right, move the head a little bit and click and drag there. Maybe bring that leg just a little bit down. Maybe a different, kind of slightly different cycle. Move the arms. Just, modify it, whatever, just a little bit. You can do all this and more in DAZ Studio, but we're not going to do any more than that. That looks good. We're going to go ahead and export this figure. So go ahead, go to File, Export, and I'm going to stick to OBJ as a format. It will export the materials and the geometry of this model. If I wanted the lights and cameras, I would choose Collada, but we're going to stick with OBJ because it's fabulous for exporting figures like this. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this T-Rex object because I've tested this earlier. We're going to say Save. Yes, we're going to replace it right now. I'm going to choose a preset to start off with. And I'm going to use the poser preset. It seems to work pretty well, very well. I'm going to say write the normals, triangulate the n-gons for me, collect maps. And we do this because we use triangles in Photoshop. It's going to convert it to triangles anyway, so this saves a step, basically. And collect the maps. Yes, we're going to do all that. Okay, so now we say accept. It's going to write the file. Boom, we're done. Switch back to Photoshop. Now back in Photoshop, we can look at the 3D menu, New 3D Layer from File. Go ahead and select that T-Rex object. This doesn't really matter for our purposes here. Just say OK, and we can modify the scene as we need. Again, I'm in the camera mode when it imports, so I'm just going to go ahead and move this around. There's a little moving tool here that moves the camera around. It's usually down on the lower left. You can drag it anywhere you want on screen. I'm going to bring it up here because it's easily to navigate the camera just really quickly. Instead of switching tools, I can just kind of click and drag as you see here. Now I can move that horizon line down a little bit here to be closer to where I want it. Move this over here. I'm going to drag him down into the scene, kind of like that. That's good enough. For this purpose, I think we'll be fine. I'll push it back just a little bit. That looks good. So now we have this moved in our scene. We have it kind of set up to where we want it. I'm going to go ahead and click on this light object here. And after you click on it, you'll see that it's selected also in the 3D panel, which you could also select it and click it here. I'm going to go ahead and move this to be a little bit more overhead to simulate kind of what we're looking at here. That is good enough. And if you pop open your 3D properties, you can get this in Windows Properties. You'll notice that when you're in the 3D panel, the Properties panel exposes new functionality for 3D. In this case, we see the shadow. The light is selected, the shadow. We're going to make it soft. We're going to drag this to the right here. I don't know, 40% looks good enough. Softens, I'll go to even 50%. Softens the light a little bit. That looks pretty good. All right. Now we're going to change the lighting structure of the scene by changing the environment. And to do that, we're going to use the background. So let's click on the background, change it to the background, and I'm going to Command or Control A, select all. I don't know why it's not letting me select all here. Let's see. I'm just going to switch to my marquee tool then, and I'm just going to select all, Command or Control A, copy this. I just did a marquee tool. I didn't want to select all for some reason. Weird things happen when you're doing demos. So now that I've selected this image, I could, just to prove it here, I'm just going to say paste. I'm not going to use that, but that's what I did. I copied it. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to use that for the lighting. So we're now in the Environment tab. Selected that. I'm going to replace this. I'm going to go over here and say new texture. And the document type in this dialog, I'm going to say use the clipboard. Because now you're going to use what I'm using from the clipboard. Say OK. It's going to create a new document here. And you're going to see that here. This turned white because now it's just a pure bright white. So we need to open this, say edit texture, and then Command V or Control V and paste it in there. Let's go ahead and flatten this. We don't need it to be multiple layers. And in fact, to save some memory, I think we're just going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to say 4. It is now tiny. It doesn't have to be that large because it's just using the colors more than anything else here. And you can see already the tonality of it has changed. There's a green on the bottom, there's light on the top. And it looks overly bright, but don't worry about that yet. We're going to fix that right now. So I can select materials here in the 3D panel, or I can go to the tab here and just shift and select all of them. And then I'll go to the specular here. The specular is too bright. I'm just going to smash that down to dark. You can modify that to change it any color mood, quite frankly. If I wanted it to be more green, I could add a little green tint to it, or maybe a blue tint, or select a color in the scene and kind of bring that down and kind of give you that kind of color. So it's not all black. There you go. And so now we have something that's much better than we had before. In fact, I may want to turn him a little more towards me. So I'm going to switch to the tool again here, the move tool. And I can deselect everything. Command or Control D deselects the marching ants. I can move it over a little bit. And I'm pretty much done. I mean, the workflow has not really changed that much. And so now it's going to light it. See, I would need to work on the shadows here. I'm not satisfied with that. It's a little bit too long there. But it gets you there very quickly. Now you can start modifying it. And you can always go back to DAZ and change the pose. You can't pose in Photoshop. It's just a static 3D geometry there. But you could bring it back in and re-import it. You would have to do those steps again to get the material maps. There are things that you could change inside the file if you want to dive into the .mtl file, which is on the disk. And you could zero those out to be black. And you wouldn't have to do some of those chores. It's not too bad. Photoshop makes it fairly easy to get those things done. And that is an updated version of this tutorial, and I think from here on, if you have any questions, please post them in the channel, and thank you for watching. And hey, if I need to update others, let me know.